Welcome to Toot Sweet. I'm Jennifer Lamb, our winemaker Michael Trujillo, and good friend and moderator Jeff Ames. I'd like to thank especially our live audience, woo, and anyone who is logging on and wants to join remotely or send in any questions. We'd love to have your input today. And we're starting our tasting today with the Two Old Dogs Sauvignon Blanc. We've just added this to our little stable in 2005. It's from a small vineyard in Yountville, and we've just harvested the 2014 earthquake vintage last Monday, and Mike just brought me some samples. It's just bubbling away in the tank. But if you have any Sauvignon Blanc to taste along with us, please do. Invite you all to join us. What do you think stylistically, Jeff? What do you find in this?
Well, I've always liked the Sauvignon Blanc from that area down around Yountville. It has really nice richness. It still has a lot of really good bracing acidity to it. So you have palate weight without it being just too shrill and too linear. But why did you add Sauvignon Blanc?
Because all we were making and growing is Cabernet Sauvignon. And actually our vineyard manager, Mike Neal, had just picked up this little vineyard in Yountville. And he was sitting on the deck talking with Herb and said, oh, by the way, I've got Sauvignon Blanc for sale this year. This was 2005, I think early summer. And you guys know everybody, so if you know anyone that wants to purchase some Sauvignon Blanc grapes, let us know. And we thought about it for a couple hours and decided, yeah, let's get our feet wet. And started with a couple hundred cases, and now we're up to 500. So I love the way that Mike handles this with 2 different tanks and 2 different yeasts, and we use 3 different clones and Sauvignon Muscat. It's a lovely wine. Yeah. Tell us what you're doing with that.
Yeah, for the style of the Sauvignon Blanc, we always are trying to capture your style that you like. It's a little bit more racy. You definitely want to show off the acidity. Definitely want to show off what California is all about with the sunshine. So, we're not making that Sauvignon Blanc that's sort of that Chardonnay-like, that over the top. It's steel fermented, like you say, in 2 different tanks. We've narrowed it down to 2 different yeasts. They both have 2 different attributes, BL1 and Prix de Mousse. And we bring those together later. And we get this into the bottle by February, March, and really capture the acidity and the crispness.
Release it a couple hours later, and it's absolutely delicious. So we're really grateful for your legwork and finding out what yeasts and what works best with the cold storage and everything you do with the picking and harvesting of it. Thank you.
How the BL1 and the Prix de Mousse, what's the difference when you have those two? Is one more tropical and more rich?
It's been trial and error a little bit. Each yeast will bring it a little bit different attributes. The VL3 is a New Zealand yeast strain, and that will bring up kind of the more grapefruit, sort of racier notes to the wine. And Prix de Mousse, it's not so much that it's characteristic to the wine itself, but it's a good, strong fermenter. Okay. When they come together, they'll finish fermenting. What's really neat is those leaves that you finish off with Prix de Mousse. They sort of add a nuttiness or a creaminess to the finished wine. So that's the reason for those.
Yeah, the Sauvignon Blanc that tastes like Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah. I love the sort of tropical flavor that I think is attributed to the Sauvignon Muscat that we add. It's about a third or a little less of the blend. And it's that white peach or guava or pink grapefruit character. It's really lovely. So it's definitely what we call a California style wine, and we drink it all day. But to your yeast discussion, it's great fun because I just had a couple of samples from the barrels dropped off in our mailbox, we're way out in the middle of nowhere, and we don't have a mailbox there that we get mail in. We get bombs and garbage and old beer cans and things dumped in our mailbox. But Herb and I reached in there last night, and he said, what is this? And they were 2 samples of the Sauvignon Blanc, one from each of the different barrels, the different tanks that are going. I will tell you that Prix de Mousse blew up a lot more quickly than the BL3 did when I opened the top. So it was all over everything. Yeah, we'd waited a little long for that.
Yeah, sorry about those beer cans.
Yeah, but I know it's your fault. Anywho, okay, so we'll move on to some red wine after I finish this. Basically, tell you what, if you'll pour that, I'll give a little history. Herb and I found this property. It's a 7-acre vineyard in the eastern hills of St. Helena. We're in one of the foothills of Howell Mountain, and we face Howell Mountain. So we're the backside of Meadowood, eastern St. Helena, if you know where that is. And basically, I know it may not compute very well, but we're from 600 to 800 feet, and we're on a very steep hill. Our home is at the top. We have 3 distinct regions that we have planted on that hillside. We found it in 1987, cleared it in 88, and planted it then. And our first crop, 91, we started selling. 92, we sold to Mike for his own brand, Carl Lawrence. He was one of the first people to discover it. And then Ann Colgan, when she was starting out with her husband, Fred Schrader, and winemaker Helen Turley, with their own brand. So Herb and I worked in different industries. He had an ag chemical company. I worked for small wineries doing PR and marketing. And we were just very happy. Oh, that's baby Kaylee. If you hear her in the background, come on in. We were very happy to be able to sell the fruit. We decided when we first planted to do AXR rootstock and Clone 7. Clone 7 is the workhorse. It has a lot of fruit forward. It gives us a lot of typical Cabernet fruit. It's what the BV and Heights and everybody else was, and has since been used extensively. But we just love that clone, and it worked very well on our soil. The problem was there were areas of the vineyard that, because we were surrounded by trees, didn't have as much sun exposure. So we decided to have Mike make what we call the almost Howell Mountain wine for our own personal consumption. I'm sure there are still people across the globe that have a label with a rubber band around it. And that's what we would give out to people of our almost Howell Mountain, because we didn't feel it was quality enough to sell. Come on in. And so that's what became our 2 Old Dogs, our companion label for the Cabernet. And Mike, I'll give it to you to talk about the 2011 vintage while we pass it around.
Yeah, but let's also mention how the wine comes about. It's a little 4.5 acre vineyard surrounded by trees, and we kind of make this for 2 reasons. One is that it kind of gets the outskirts of the vineyard, the ones that get a little more competition from shade, so on and so forth. Still fantastic grapes, but because they're in the shade, they tend to hold their acidity a little bit more. They have a different ripeness character than, say, the heart of the vineyard where the HL comes from. And then, not to mention, we have a little bit of Cab Franc, a little bit of Merlot growing in what we call the lower 40. So this is assembled from those wines and anything that may spill down from the HL brand. So here we're trying to achieve a wine that's a little prettier, a little softer, a little more everyday drinking, not as robust, not as big as the main label HL. That little teeny bit of Merlot and Cab Franc really come through with the aromatic.
But some of the main blocks will sometimes find their way into this just because of, you have a little bit more shading or a little bit less ripeness in certain areas, so they find their way into this as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
and we'll make those blend decisions later. Yeah.
Okay.
On bountiful vintages, this actually will benefit from some of that good fruit.
Mm-hmm.
This is the 2011 vintage, and as you all know, it was the wettest and coolest vintage that we've ever experienced, and we had to declassify a lot of this. So some lucky winery got a lot of our fruit. But we were able, through Mike's connections, to find some lovely Merlot from both Howell Mountain and North Napa. To blend in, and I think that 12-13% that's in here really made all the difference in the world. Like, it's a lovely food wine. It's nice and spicy, and just a really soft, easy drinking wine. So that's our 2 Old Dogs Cabernet. Question?
Yes.
Here's mine.
Thank you. Actually, one of the things we were curious about is when you do a meritage and you're mixing different varietals, how do you choose the ratio?
Ha! There's my Chef Boyardee. Thank you.
A lot of trial and error. It takes, you're assembling these wines for 2 years. You're tasting the barrels throughout the whole time. And just in your mind and through your notes, you kind of know, you kind of mold in the clay. It takes a couple of years to mold these together, and just extensive notes and lots of good memory and lots of good little tags on the barrel, so you know it's, you know, luxury lot versus secondary lot.
I love the way that Mike will line everything up on the lab table at the winery, and everything is different pipettes filled with different percentages of different wines, and we all go through them and we go, yeah, maybe, sort of, yeah, no, it's missing the varietal character. It's missing what I'm looking for in the Two Old Dogs. And then you get to go, wow, that one's great. And he says, yeah, I knew you'd like that. You know, it's just wonderful because it's a constant flavor that we expect to get, that we expect to be able to give to our clients, depending on what Mother Nature gave us. And he's just a pro at blending those different elements. And although this is the first year we've really added all of that Merlot to a wine, primarily they've only been estate bottled. But thanks for the question.
For something like this also, would you adjust the oak regime, like the amount of time that you spend in oak, the coopers, the amount of new oak and so on? Absolutely,
but that's more of a feel for the vintage. You know, a big, robust vintage, a very warm vintage, you can lather on the oak pretty good, as you know. Yeah. But in a lighter vintage or a cooler vintage, especially like 11 was, is you got to really back off of the oak. You got to let the grape express itself. Yeah. So what I really love about working with Jennifer is very much a believer to express what Mother Nature gives you that year and what the vineyard gives you. She doesn't push or heavy hand me for heavy oak and heavy extraction. It's about expressing the personality of the vineyard.
Yeah, the epitome of that, I think it was wonderful. It was the first year we were working together. We decided in 1997 to sort of stick our toes in the water and try to pick what we thought were the best lots around Ann Colgan's 13 rows in the middle. And we went to Mike because we loved what he was doing with his Carl Lawrence and certainly what he's doing with his Trujillo wine now. And said, Mike, if you were to make a signature wine for us, what would you do? So we tasted through all of his barrels in the winery of wines he was already producing under his label. And Herb liked this style of the Two Old Dogs a little bit more than I did, and I liked a little heartier style. So we chose the more extracted one for the HL. Fantastic vintage. We made 50 cases. Yay. It was wonderful. The next year, 1998, it was certainly not as spectacular a growing season as the 1997. And Mike came to us about a year later and said, I need to talk to you about this wine. I think we should declassify it. I said, oh my God, what have you done in the winery? because I've heard all of these horror stories, you know. Yeah, well, not the winemaker necessarily. It could have been the assistant winemaker or some peon or somebody that added something that they shouldn't have, racked something else into our tank. It happens all the time. Well, it used to. But Mike said, no, it's fine. Here, let's taste it. You know, there's really nothing wrong. It's just never going to be the wine that the 97 was. And I said, please, Mike, all we want to do is provide the best possible wine we can that reflects what Mother Nature gave us that vintage. And he said, oh my God, in that case, it's delicious. I said, yeah, all right. So we've gone with that theory ever since, and it's been fun.
And it has been fun. Yeah. Very fun.
Yeah.
Well, the 98s have kind of proven to be better wines, I think, in the long run than people expected them to be. I mean, they're showing really, really well, actually, right now.
All right.
As long as wine has structure and balance, it may take a little longer to come around. It may take a little longer to shed some of the youthfulness of it, but it will come around.
It takes time, yeah.
There was another question from John and Stacy. They stopped by and saw you not long ago at the tasting room. Just loved everything, and they just saw this picture that you show on the vineyard with a lot of trees.
Yes.
And they're talking about shade. And what kind of canopy management do you have to do to have all your fruit coming up and ripe?
Thank you.
And by the way, the 2011 Two Old Dogs were great.
Well, of course they were. Thank you very much. For canopy management, what we tend to do, because we are a northeast-facing hillside vineyard. It's a very interesting climatic area in that we get the morning sun that comes through and then it sets behind us. So we don't get a lot of extended daylight hours at the end of the day. Unfortunately, some of the rows are exposed to the sun. And so what we try to do is to do a little bit of a comb over, and we pull some of the canes from the back of the vine over the fruit that is more exposed. But this year, the last 3 years, we haven't needed to do that. It's just a phenomenal growing season, and we're really looking forward to all of the fruit this year. But we do some thinning, we do take leaves away from the fruit source there, but we're always a little leery of taking too much, because the minute we start doing that, we're going to get 106 degrees for 5 days, and we know everything's going to get burned. So we do try to let the filtered sunlight come through to the grapes, but not much more to let everything open up. It's
like washing your car. The second you know it's going to rain.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The second you leave, pull everything, you're going to get blasted. Yeah.
And the new plantings, with the healthier canopy and everything, it's a lot better today with the new plants.
We did plant originally on AXR in 1988 and still cloned 7, but saw for the next 5 or 6 years how vines were dying off. And we kept replanting them, but sporadically throughout the vineyard, we just saw all these misses that we were replanting. So you had 5-year-old and 2-year-old and 1-year-old vines. And we decided by 2002 that it was time just to pull out separate blocks and replant the whole vineyard. So we replanted on St. George rootstock, still with clone 7. And that happened in a series of 3 different years. And finally, by 2006, it was all replanted, and we have a wonderful new vineyard crop now. So we're really happy with the growth that we've had the last few years.
But that's one of the neat things about the Herbland vineyards, that you didn't choose, like when you replanted, you didn't choose the shiny new clones, the shiny new rootstocks. You basically went as old school California as you could possibly go. St. George and clone 7.
Oh yeah.
And that is classic Napa.
It works for us.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of classic Napa, 2011 HO Vineyard. So this is from the middle block of the vineyard. Again, it gets a lot more exposure to the sun. The sun rises here, comes over here, and we get these late afternoon beautiful streaks through this part of the vineyard, whereas these 2 blocks are primarily the 2 old dogs. Question?
You led into that beautifully. I know in addition to wine loving, you are also dog loving.
Oh, yeah.
Where did this wonderful name, 2 Old Dogs, come from?
Well, may I
absolutely
use a prop? I'm really good at props. Yeah. Husband Herb Lamb unfortunately took a fall in the vineyard the other day and has his foot up and can't join us, but he may or may not be one of the old dogs, although we too have 2 beautiful black labs. Unfortunately, we've lost one earlier this year, but at the time that we started naming our companion label 2 Old Dogs, we did have 2, and it was just an inevitable fun companion label that we chose to call the wines that are secondary to our premium wine, our signature wine, the HL Vineyards. So the Adirondack chair that is in this image here, made by Mike, another Mike, I'm surrounded by Mikes, oh my God, Michael Gray, is actually a chair that Herb's 95-year-old father made. He made a series of them. They're all signature models. None of them are the same. They all have a different list, but they're fun, and he did a great job with them. So our 2 Old Dogs label reflects Herb enjoying a cigar, a glass of wine, and a black lab, whilst drinking some of his own brews. Thank you. All right. We want to start talking about our 2011 HL Vineyards.
Well, this wine comes from mainly the center of the heart of the vineyard, the part of the vineyard that gets the sunshine throughout the day and into the early afternoon. So Again, as Jennifer mentioned, the sun sort of crests over the hill right behind their house. And so in the hottest part of the day, the vineyard already starts cooling off. And then from there, it's just ambient temperature and ambient airflow that helped us get these ripe. So this 2011, again, the vintage was a very cool vintage. This is a vintage that's going to express a little bit more of the spicy, almost peppery, licoricey kind of notes. It's not going to be that big, bold. We do that on purpose. Again, we don't lather it full of oak. You're not going to smell it and, figure out what cooperage we use to make the wine. So here, it's a bigger, bolder wine than the Two Old Dogs. It's Cabernet only. And this is a very, very age-worthy wine.
Yeah, I've kind of said, for those people who say California can't do wines of delicacy and finesse and ageability and so on, nowadays, if that's what you're looking for, you're looking for 11s. The 11s are, it's sometimes that food wine moniker is thrown around in kind of a bad way, but this is a wine that shows great on its own. But yeah, if you were to sit down and actually put something on the grill, like Herb wants to do very often, it would go great with anything he had up there.
Absolutely.
And something with a lot of marbling, I think.
Yeah, and time will do these type of wines. Time does them best. They just sort of lay and age and mature and come together. So time does these favors. Yeah,
the secondary nuances, kind of where you get that bay leaf and that cedar sort of profile too, that comes out with a little bit of age.
I love the way this is coming around, even since we just released it earlier this year. And it's absolutely delicious.
And lower alcohols. It's a vintage of lower alcohols. So those lower alcohols are going to, again, make the wines a little prettier. And
with our exposure, we could never get 15, 5, 16 alcohol. We could never get that dense, extracted, jammy character at all. And this is just, the other extreme of what our vineyard can produce, a cool vintage. It's lovely. I really enjoy drinking this.
And they both show 11 very well, but it's just a more dense, richer side of the 2011 over the Two Old Dogs.
I wanted to get into some of my show and tell here. Jeff is going to be purchasing some fruit this year for another winery that he produces for. Jeff is the winemaker at Rudius, but he also makes wine for Tor. Tor Kenward is an old friend of ours, and Tor is going to be purchasing a few tons of our fruit this year. And so Jeff and I have been walking the vineyard, and just this wonderful tufaceous soil, this rhyolite Aiken Boomer series. It's lots of little rocks, and they're pinky gray. It's amazing when we first cleared the property how we got just powders of just puffs and puffs everywhere we went. We left pink and gray footprints throughout, B of A parking lot. Wherever we got out of the truck, boom, there was a mess. But it's just a wonderful soil that is scattered with massive rocks, and we do drip irrigate. It's not dry farmed, but it needs some irrigation to go for the rest of the year. We're just going to slow down nearer to harvest and stop the irrigation, when our winemaker says so. All right, next wine.
That's nice.
Okay, one more.
If you want somebody who's going to dump out wine, you got to.
I know. We should have a dump bucket that we can recycle.
Question, Jennifer, Mike. So tell me if you do at all alter your winemaking, specifically aging, depending on what your readings are, your TA, your pH, your bricks. Do you age them any shorter, any longer, depending on what kind of fruit you pull out?
No.
You stick to the plan. Stick to the plan.
I'm a true believer. I got the great opportunity in my early career to work under the great Andrei Chelichev in the 80s. And through all of his wisdom and through all of my 30 years of experience, as long as a wine is balanced, as long as the acidity, the pH, and everything is in perfect balance, the wine will age. Whether it's a vintage like 97 or 08 that's very opulent, high pH, and low acidity, as long as you structure the wine with balance, and that's kind of hard to explain. I mean,
Yeah.
I kind of use this sort of curve concept when I make wine. It'll age. And I love going back to the wines that I've made 10, 12, 15 years ago and open them up side by side next to the hot shots of their day. And my wines are still alive and they're still vibrant. And that's what's neat about like a vintage like 11. Just don't smother it. Just be delicate with it. So, no, I don't think ageability is so much vintage related.
Thank you.
Comment? What do you think about some of your...
I tend to agree. I go back to, I really moved to this valley in 99, after coming down from Oregon in 98. And so the first real vintages that I got to work a lot with were 2001, 2002. And yeah, I've gone back. I don't have any more of the 01s or 02s. I tend to drink stuff kind of fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can still go back and try some of those wines from time to time from friend sellers. And yeah, those wines were made in a different way than we're making the wines now. They were picked a little bit lower sugars and so on, and they've aged beautifully. But I think that the ones we're doing now are going to age just as well. They're a little bit bigger and a little bit richer. We've also learned how to manage that, as opposed to in the previous years, it would have kind of overwhelmed the wines. Now I taste them like, no, they're going to be a little bit more approachable young, but I still think they've got this great long aging curve to them.
Good.
Yeah, balance is the key.
Speaking of aging, on our website, Mike and I and Herb and several of our winemaking friends have done a couple different vertical tastings. So if you're interested at all, go to herblandvineyards.com and you can check out the most recent one we did was a Two Old Dogs vertical of 7 different vintages. And then we did one earlier of the HL Vineyards. And those were our thoughts at the time through the community of having a wonderful big meal and eating and drinking and laughing and telling jokes. And I was trying to madly get notes on everything that people were saying at the time. But there are tasting notes online if you'd like. So I decided to bring an older vintage, not very old, but one that was poo-pooed by the press. And in terms of the press, we don't really make enough. We started with 50 cases. We doubled production 6 years later. Ooh. And now we're up to 300 cases of wine. So there's really not that much to put out for the press. I would hate to get 98 points. I would hate to get 88 points. We're not in this business to see what somebody else thinks of our wine. We're in this business to make the best possible wine we can from our vineyard every year, with the only difference being what Mother Nature gave us and Mike's temperament. So, so what I've chosen is the 88 Cabernet, which we will be re-releasing this year for people who are new to our list and were not able to purchase any at the time. But if you enjoy this, it's a lovely wine. And I just thought it would be fun to bring out something that I can remember the press saying, keep buying your, sorry, it's 98.
I was going to say.
98. Hello, 2008. Hello. Are we at 28? Yeah.
It's got an 8.
Anyway, it's got an 8. People were saying buy the 2007 or wait for the 2009. Don't buy the 2008. So I love this wine, and I brought it to special occasions like Jeff's baby's christening.
Thank you.
In a Magnum, and we just love sharing this vintage because it's one we're really fond of now, and it's aging very well.
It's showing wonderfully.
Thank you.
Well, this actually is a good sort of
spicy.
good comment on the last question that we just had, ageability of wine, vintages of wine. I was looking back at the notes that you handed me last night to review the 08 notes. And as a winemaker, I actually saw this vintage as being an over-the-top, opulent, sort of clunky vintage. The pHs were very high and the acidities were very low. And I kind of expected it to be kind of a lazy vintage. But when I went back and read the notes that we did when you released the wine, it talked about integrated tannin, good acidity that you can't quite see yet because it's so opulent. But the prediction of it being ageable was very, in my notes, I was actually there. I was actually quite surprised to say, hey, give this wine some time. The acidity will hold it up. And it's right there now. Yeah. It's still lively. It's still young. And that's exciting.
No, the nose on that's just gorgeous.
There's lots of cloves and cinnamon and allspice. But
you wouldn't... That's like a really young, fresh...
Still fresh. very fresh.
So you guys, while you're enjoying the
That's really
2008 year, another question here that came up this week from Ivan Versal. I don't know. Now, 2014, when you expect
Oh yeah.
harvest,
Mm-hmm.
and what do you think?
Oh, well, excuse
And
me.
how? I know
It's
this
going to be
little bit like
fantastic because
Yeah.
that's the birth year of our first grandchild, our granddaughter, and it's
And
the
our
birth
first
child
child,
of
yeah.
Jeff's first.
Yeah.
And Mike just got married to Terry
Yeah.
this year. My God,
It
I
has
mean,
to be.
It has to be a great year. We're going to make it in 12-liter bottles for
Yeah.
everybody. It has to. We're only going to bottle this vintage in 12-liter bottles and etch it with everybody's baby's name.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But it actually does look really,
Oh,
really
yeah.
nice so far. It's one of the drought vintages that we've had out here, but the temperatures haven't been particularly spiking at all. If you look at the weather report for Napa, for St. Helena, you basically have nothing but call it like 88 to 92, and it's just 88 to 92 all across the board. So it's been incredibly even, which the vines love. But yeah, so far, I don't know what Mike's seen, but I'm looking at it right now, and everybody I talk to is really, really excited about 14, especially you have 12, 13, 14, 3 in a row.
The trio.
Uh-huh.
It was nail biting in the spring with, we had no rain. Absolutely no rain. And we were all worried. We were getting ready to cut off a lot of crop, get those vines to healthy.
Yeah.
But I think the key to this vintage being great is just like you said, is the temperatures have been just steady. And a vine loves that.
Yeah.
If it gets too hot, a vine stops growing. If it gets too cold, it stops growing.
Yeah.
So we've just been at that perfect temperature to get good maturity. Stuff that's coming off the vine already tastes fabulous.
No, it looks great. We got some rain in March, which was kind of a perfect time for it to hit, so the vines had some water to work off of naturally in the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks great so far.
All right.
All right, guys, a couple more minutes, couple of more questions. I don't know if you can read that.
No, I can't.
I'm too old. But Jeff, you're young.
Which one?
That's in English. I can read.
Is it in English? Jennifer, are you and Herb going to label the 2014 Sauvignon Blanc Earthquake Sauvignon Blanc? No, we're not. We did pick our Sauvignon Blanc the day after the earthquake, but that was already scheduled. It's not our fault that the earthquake came honest. I'm so very sorry for people like Jeff and everybody else that suffered so many losses. But certainly we'd like to donate to that cause, and we will be doing, if anybody purchases any Cabernet this month, we will donate 25% of the total to the earthquake relief. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, we fared good. Luckily, we fared good with all of our production.
Oh, that was amazing. Yeah.
Knock on wood.
And one side note, Mike and I have opened up a tasting room in St. Helena.
Oh, yes.
So if anybody is interested in a private tasting with us individually, we have a facility now where we can do it and share each other's wines and share our love. Okay, one more question. What's it say?
Oh, there you go.
Mike, do you still work at Carl Lawrence? What other wineries do you work for? There we go. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Come on, plug it.
No, Carl Lawrence unfortunately has the partnership has gone its separate ways. So I'm no longer involved with Carl Lawrence, and I ventured off on my own with my own label called Trujillo.
Which
so
is
that's the new.
delicious and still has some Herbland Vineyards fruit in it.
Absolutely. So that's the new. And a handful of other projects. But been working with Jennifer since 1990.
And we are very fortunate to have him and his passion and his expertise. Yeah. It's delicious. Yeah. I love what he does with our wines.
This is drinking good.
It
They're
is.
not bad. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, you guys.
Thanks, guys.